Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, thank you so much for continuing to come back and support my channel. I appreciate all of you so very much. Today I am doing episode 82 of my palette roulette series, in which I let an app choose a palette for me. I use it for a week, I come back to you, I talk about it and show you some swatches and show you some pictures of the looks that I did, and then we pick a new palette. Last week we picked two palettes. The reason why is because we picked this one, which I thought was not super colorful, and I wanted something that I could get some color out of. I also, once I opened it, realized it was full of color, but it also appeared to be full of all shimmer. So I was trying to pull something that had a little less shimmer in it, and then I pulled this, which this is the McGrath Labs mini Ecstasy palette. And if you guys know anything about these are all shimmer. It's all full of shimmer and not a bad palette, honestly. So let's dive into these two bad boys. We're going to start with the Stila because I like to end on a positive note. And what I have to say about this isn't super positive. The Stila Eyes Are the Window Body Palette. This is it. It's got really nice packaging. I love. It's not really a clasp closure, but it's not kind of magnetic. I mean, it is magnetic. Obviously, it either has to be clasp or magnetic, but the magnets aren't super strong. I feel like if you're traveling with this, which it's the perfect size for travel and the perfect amount of shades for travel, if you're traveling with this, it very easily could pop open in your makeup bag. The back of it is this. It's just got a gold sticker on it. It tells you what the name of the shadow is, all the shadow names in there. It tells you the net weight of 0.51 ounces, and it tells you that it's good for 24 months. This palette started off at $49. I don't think it's for sale anymore, but I do know that I did see it on a website for like $29 or something like that, maybe Mercari, or I don't know, some other like second resale type site, which is probably where mine's going to end up also. Just start there. It is 0.51 ounces, so that means there are 12 shadow pans in here, and each one of those pans is 0.042 ounces per pan. It does have a decent sized mirror, and those are what the shadows look like. It is a very jewel toned palette. It says it's good for wet or dry use. I would say don't use it wet. Every time I wet one of these shadows, it looked awful on my eye. It created texture, it looked cakey, it clumped out, and it caused problems in the pan that I had to rectify with scraping off or taking a piece of tape and putting it over the top of it and then peeling it off. There are some decent shades in here, some standout shades in here. I would say one of them is this one, which is the white, which is called Moonstone in the palette. It's obviously this one here. This is what it looks like. It is on the inner corners of my eyes. It is in my brow bone. It was a very pigmented, really pretty white tone. I also like this one here, which is called Pink Diamond. It is this color right here on the end, and it's right there next to Moonstone. It is just a really pretty color, and it also worked well in the inner corner of my eye or in my brow bone, whereas the McGrath shadows didn't. So I was really happy to have those in here. But there's not really a shade in here that you could use as a setting shade for eye primer if you're going to do eye primer and really like to set your eye primer. So there's that. If you want those things, you're not going to find it in this palette. Another one that I really loved, actually, until I put it into my eye look today, was this green tone. I really found this to be one of my favorite colors in this palette, but then putting it on my skin, what happened to that shade? It just, the pigmentation in this palette is atrocious, and that is like, I took all of it off of my finger and put it on. Where did it go? Like the pigmentation, and that is what I have to say about the rest of this palette. The pigmentation is nil. There is zero pigmentation here. There's so much powder in this palette. And I just, like this eye look that I created today, I do have that teal color on the outer V, and then I have this dark purple here in the crease, and then I have this lighter purple here up above the crease, and it is blended out. I had to blend it together. They perform pretty poorly. It's super patchy, but I did pack the color onto my lids and then blend, and then packed and then blended, and then packed and then blended. Like I had to pack on probably 5 layers of these shadows before I got any real pigmentation out of them that stayed as I blended them out. So there's that. The pigmentation in this is crap. You guys can see that. That is this color. What happened to that color? So then let's take this dark purple right here and put it next to it. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? Like, how did I get this color? Oh, because I put 15 layers on my eyeballs. I just don't think that you have to do that. You shouldn't have to do that. The pigmentation in these shadows is crap. This is crap. I am super happy I did not pay $49 for this palette. I actually picked up this palette at TJ Maxx. I know that the only one of these eyes are the window palettes that is still for sale on the Stila website is the really neutral toned one, and I have to imagine that it is still for sale because nobody knows the difference between a neutral with pigmentation and a neutral without. And people who are going after a neutral palette, let's be honest, probably are only wearing neutrals most of the time and aren't looking for like a lot of pigmentation. And that sounds super shitty, but when you're wearing browns and tans, and you don't really notice the difference between lack of pigmentation and all the pigmentation as much as you do when you're wearing purples and pinks and greens and blues. I will also say that when we pulled this palette, it looked very much like every single shade in this palette had glitter in it, but a lot of these shades don't perform that way, and a lot of the glitter doesn't stick around once it's on your eye. I am not going to swatch this palette just because I think that it would be pointless. You guys just saw 4 swatches. There are, you know, some really standout shades in here. I really do like this white. I really do like this pink diamond shade, and I really do like this pink, or this, that's not pink, that's purple, this lavender color. But these 2 colors might as well be the same color. And the rest of these just really lack the pigmentation that is necessary to really show you on camera. I think that this like gray tone right here is one of the standout shades because it actually is gray in the pan and looks gray on your hand. The rest of them don't really, there's zero pigmentation. This is just a really beautiful gray that kind of can lean a little bit lavender, so there is some standouts in here, and I would pull from this palette for those standout shades. But otherwise, this just isn't it. This just isn't a palette that, ooh, it's awful. It worked similarly with a primer as without a primer, so like you could do either or. It's not gonna, if you don't want to wear primers on your eyes, this is probably a good palette for you because it's not going to work any different with a primer than it does without a primer. I would say it starts to fade away at probably the 5-6 hour mark. You might get a good 7 hours of wear before it starts to fade away, but really Monday morning got up, got ready for physical therapy and my nutrition appointment, and by the time I got back from my nutrition appointment 3 hours after I had put the makeup on, you could barely tell anything was on my face except for the lid shade that was from the Pat McGrath palette. that's what I have to say about this. I'm glad that I got this from TJ Maxx because there are some standout shades. I'm going to see if I can't depot this and get the, 4 shades out of here that I do like, because the rest of the 8 shades, I have these shades probably somewhere else in my collection that are much better than these, and I couldn't stand behind a recommendation for the Stila Eyes Are the Window palettes, and it's kind of put a bad taste in my mouth for any of the other Stila eyeshadows. I know that some people, they have ones that I saw at GMC last year that were beautiful, but the mattes in the palette were not. They just were not amazing, and I think that's kind of the same scenario we're seeing here. That isn't going into the declutter right away. I may or may not sell it on my Poshmark. I'm not decided on what I'm going to do with it yet. I think I might research depotting this particular palette and pull the 4 shadows that I do like out of it. But I mean, if it seems like a big, too much work, then I'll probably put it on my Poshmark. Or give it to my daughter. I don't know. I feel weird putting something that I detest so much on Poshmark and asking for money for it. So there's that. The second palette that we had walking into this week was the Pat McGrath Mini Eye Ecstasy palette in Sublime. And this is a $28 palette. It doesn't come like most other Pat McGrath palettes with the real luxe packaging. This is one of her minis. I wish the mini packaging of this was a little more luxe, because you still are paying $28 for 5 mini pans of shadow comparatively to her regular pans. This has 4.2 stars on Sephora.com. This is what the packaging looks like. It's just like a translucent plastic packaging, but it does have a sticker on the back that tells you what each one of the shades is called, what the palette's name is, and the shelf life of 12 months. You open it up, there's no mirror, of course, because it's just a mini, and these are the 5 shades. These shades are beautiful. These are pretty, but they're not the same as what's in her bigger pans. I don't think that they're as shiny as the special shades in her full-size palettes. I will also say that the shadows in this one and the other one, I have Subversive also. They're the only 2 mini palettes that she has, are not new shades. These are shades that are in some of her other palettes. As a matter of fact, I think I have this one in the palette that I have. So these aren't new shades to her collection. They're just mini special shades in a nice, neat package for people who can't afford Pat McGrath. This is a good way for you to test it. It's only $28. It is only 5 shades, but it is only $28. Each one of these pans is 0.035 ounces of product. I can't remember how big the full-size shadow pans are, but I know full-size pan of each one of these shadows is $25 a piece. So there's that. And these aren't full size, obviously. These don't exacerbate the texture on your eyeballs. They don't cater to them. It is what is this shade right here is what is on my eyelid today, and I don't feel like it shows my texture like it could. It is also kind of duochromy. Like as I move my eyeball, it looks like it's a little bit like browner or golder off to the side. It does have a little bit of a pink shift. As I'm looking at it this way, it looks more orangey pink. But looking at it head on, it looks more red. So I do like that. These blend out beautifully. They play well with any shadow you put with them, good or bad, obviously. And they're star of the show. They perform well with or without primer. I think that they do well. I think they do better with primer, but I can't really pinpoint why I feel like they do better with primer. I think that you get a good 10 to 12 hours of wear out of these shadows, which is horrible because I had them paired with this that didn't last more than 3 hours. So at the end of the day, every time I wore it, this was the only thing left on my eyeball, which looked a little funny. They blend out beautifully. I could blend it all over my eye look and it would just have a really cohesive look to it. They blend into each other really well, and they blend into any other kind of format of shadow really well. I feel like this one is probably more of a satin or matte with glitter formula than it is a special shade formula. I just put my finger in that shade because it performs a little bit differently than the other ones. It's definitely not got that high shine to it like the other ones do. There's zero fallout with this, whereas this fell out all over my face. They're gorgeous. Gorgeous shadows. So I will swatch these guys for you because I think it's important that you be able to see these. So there's only 5 shades. I have to be careful because they're kind of soft actually. I kind of just dug into that brown one and now I'm sad. Okay, so this first one here is Sinful. It's kind of a bright light gold with like kind of an olive feel to it. I know that when I put it on my eyes in one of the eye looks that I had, it actually kind of looked a little more green than it did gold on my eye. This one is the dark brown that I said I thought was a little more satin or maybe matte with like some glitter in it. It does perform a wee bit differently and it's probably the least shiny of the 5 shades. It is so, so pretty. And I think that that color mixed with this one or even this red would look just beautiful in a one eye look. Maybe I'll do that before I before I edit this so that I can get a picture of that in this video as well, because I have to be honest, I was so disappointed with that Stila palette that I didn't take very many pictures this week. It was a hot damn mess with that palette. The third shadow in there is this one, and it is a little bit of a warm toned copper. It's called Golden Nectar, and like I said, I think this one is in my Sublime palette. I love this gold, as weird as it is, because I'm not a gold person, but these 2 shades of gold are the pretty perfect shades of gold for me because one's a little more orange toned and one's a little more like white toned or champagne-y. So there's that. This is the red that is on my eye today, and I'm gonna dig into that again because pinky swatches are no good for me. So you guys see that red, but if you lay it down, it looks a little bit more like orange, coppery. It can look green. It is pretty duochromy. I love it. And on my pinky finger, I don't know if you guys can tell the duochrominess of it. Oh my God, it's so pretty. And then the last shade here is, oh, this one's name was Corruption. This one's name is Sextrovert, this one on top, and it is a bronze. This one is, again, not super sparkly. I think that besides this brown, this one is probably the most lackluster in the palette. Let me get up close so you guys can see that. Let me know if you see that duochrominess in that pink shade. You definitely could see it there, couldn't you? I hope so. I hope that I'm doing it justice. But honestly, Pat McGrath Special Shades is where it's at for her. I'm not a fan of her mattes, so I jumped on this because of, on both of them, because of the fact that there was so, 5. It was 5 special shadows only. No mattes. I didn't have to dick around with those, so that was spectacular. If you have not experienced Pat McGrath yet, this is where you need to start, because as I said, her mattes are not fantastic. I get along better with, I don't know, ColourPop mattes, and they're far less expensive, and they're definitely not in $125 palettes. Her $125 palettes are beautiful, but mine sits up here on my table and could be used as a hammer or what. As a matter of fact, I think there was a video by an influencer that I watch, Georgia Harris. You guys maybe know her. She talked about using her Pat McGrath palette as a hammer. It really could be used as a hammer. It's a beautiful lacquer box, but there's more mattes in it than there is special shades, and the special shades is where I think that you should devote your money to. Start with those. If you like those, then move on to the $65, lacquer palettes with the 4 special shades in them. I think that they're stunning. I would pay $28 for those shadows over and over again. I think that this one will stay in my collection for a very long time to come, more than likely. They're just really pretty shades. I definitely think that this Pat McGrath palette is probably a palette that could stay on its own or stand on its own just because of that brown shade being a little more mattish than, or satinish than the other shades in the palette. I think that you could definitely perform using just this palette. It reminds me a lot of the Natasha Denona mini sunset palette that I have. Just same color stories, and I used that palette on its own for a week and didn't even have to pull from a single pan eyeshadow palette. I didn't get much pictures, as I said. The Stila eyeshadow palette really disappointed me in its quality, and that's sad because I have a Stila highlighter that I love, but I haven't really tried a whole lot from Stila, if I'm honest, and I couldn't imagine having had paid $49 for that shadow palette. It would have been a shadow palette I would have taken back. It definitely would. It's an awful shadow palette, and I don't say that a lot. I don't know that I've maybe said that there's a shadow palette that I've used in this palette roulette series that was awful, but I can't remember. But that one was really bad. You guys, when the color in the pan is so beautiful, you expect to see at least a little bit of that beauty on your skin and not have to build it up into a cakey mess. And that's really what you had to do with that eyeshadow palette to get the pigmentation that the pan showed. And I don't think that that's quite fair. Okay, this is the decision wheel app that I use to pick a palette. For those of you who do not know, I do have a Samsung Note 9. This is the decision wheel app that I picked up out of our Play Store, and it is called the decision wheel. I just put all of my palettes into this wheel at the beginning of this, and as we go through this process, as we use palettes, I do pull them out. As I haul palettes with you all, I do put them in here once we've hauled them together. And to pick a new palette, we just hit this button here. This is the Winky Lux Kitten palette. This used to be one of my favorite palettes, so let me go pick that up. All right, this is the Winky Lux Kitten palette. This is the palette that it chose for us this week. This is what it looks like, no mirror. I actually kind of dig this palette. It's one of my favorite palettes. This is a really beautiful duochrome color. I feel like this hasn't got a whole lot of color to it. I wonder if we pulled another palette, if we would get a giant palette. Do you guys want to pull another palette? You want to do two back to back? Two palettes twice in a row? Let's do it, because I feel like I need more color because it is Pride Month and I want to wear a lot of color. All right, so here we are. Back at this guy. Let's roll for another one. Oh, here we have the BH Zodiac palette. This is a huge palette. Maybe we should put Winky Lux Kitten back and just do BH Zodiac, because this is a huge palette. Let me go get it. All right, guys, this is the Zodiac palette, and I haven't even used it yet. I did purchase this palette because my friend Lisa talks about this palette all the dang time, and I have never used it, so I thought I needed to try it. Everybody I listen to or watch that has used this palette raves about this palette. So I'm actually kind of excited that it showed up this week on this, and this is such a colorful palette. It does have a really nice sized mirror. I think I might put the Winky Lux Kitten palette back because I feel like there's just too much, and this might, I almost wish I hadn't pulled such a giant palette because I would have gladly used the Winky Lux Kitten with another little palette, but I feel like these colors are pretty redundant with what is also in this palette. Sorry, my camera turned off and I didn't realize it turned off. So I really just feel like there's a lot of redundancy between this one and the Winky Lux Kitten palette, and I could either put this one back or the Winky Lux Kitten palette, and I feel like this one is probably a better palette to use just because everyone that I know that has this palette has spoken amazing words about this palette, and I mean, I'm going to keep the Winky Lux one out as well. If I do use it, I will let you guys know. But I really think that I want to put it back and just focus on this one for next week because it is such a large palette, which is probably what I'll do. And it's got a lot of color in it, which is really what I want for this month because we are looking at Pride Month. So you've got to have a lot of color. You've got to show your spirit. So there's that. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that if you did, you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. Really does help our channels out here. I also hope that you liked it or me enough that you're considering subscribing to my channel. It's free to you. It really would help me out, and I would love to have you as a part of my wonderful YouTube family here. If you do subscribe to my channel, please make sure that you're hitting that notification bell. I do upload content 3 to 4 times a week, depending on the week, so I wouldn't want you to miss anything, and that bell is going to notify you every single time I upload a video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and please stay safe. Please social distance. Love everybody from afar. Love everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and until next time, bye guys.